Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with Magnegrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnegrip.com.
Attention first responders, ready for a new challenge? You can turn your leadership skills into deliciousness by becoming a Firehouse Subs restaurant owner. First responders will receive a $100,000 cash incentive to help open their restaurant. Continue serving after service. Visit firehousesubsfranchising.com today. The opinions, viewpoints, and advice shared in this podcast are solely those of the host, Dave McGlynn, and should not be interpreted as reflecting or endorsed by the Department of the Army or the Department of Defense Fire and Emergency Services.
All right. Welcome to another fire engineering podcast. The Training Officer. I'm your host, Dave McGlynn. If you are a first-time viewer, listener to the show covers training officer stuff, but it's not just training officer stuff. We're talking about how to mentor people, how to inspire people, how to develop people, talk about the dedication to the service, the roles and responsibilities of the person who's responsible for developing firefighters and people. We've had a blessing of having a cadre of instructors from all over the country and great leaders from all over the country over the past 6 years to come on the show and share some nuggets of information. Typically, I try to invite people that I enjoy having dialogue and conversation with. A long time overdue. My guest tonight is a friend of mine. He's a buddy of mine, and we both share a great passion for the training officer realm. So if you don't want to hate, don't say Zaitz. And if you want to have a fight or don't want to have a fight, make sure that you say Zaitz, because that's how you pronounce his name. So I am joined by Brian Zaitz, the president of ISFSI, assistant fire chief down in Kirkwood, down in Missouri. Brian, thank you, brother, for coming and joining me on the show tonight. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been, like you said, a long time overdue, and we definitely hang out a lot, but we've been talking about doing this for a while, so it's all good to finally get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to plug the whole way to pronounce your name because I
it's everything, Zaitz, it's like, come on.
Dude, I love when people say Zaitz and you get hot. You're like, it's Zaitz. I'm like, yeah.
It's just German. It's the I before the A. Come on.
Right. I love it.
It's all right.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I love it.
It's all good.
For my viewers, for the audience, for anybody listening, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, what got you involved with the fire service, and all that.
Yeah, sure. So Brian Zaitz, grew up and lived in St. Louis my whole life. Got in the fire service at a young age of 15 years old. Did the whole volunteer explorer thing. Kind of knew it was for me. Family history of it. It was kind of interesting. My uncle and my dad was a volunteer firefighter. Full-time other job, but volunteered at a setting. And then my uncle was a full-time career captain, local St. Louis County Fire Department. And then kind of showed me the way, kind of got me in the fire service. And then as I got into the fire service, I realized I didn't know at the time when members of my family passed away, that my mom's side actually had members on the fire department back in 1908. And so I was able to kind of like do some artifact and find that, my great grandfather on my mom's side was one of the original founding members of the Webster Rose Fire Department. So it's kind of weird. Had fire on both sides. Didn't really know it. The only one of my brothers and sisters in the fire service. But so did all that. Was very fortunate to get hired at a young age of 20. Went to the fire academy, became a paramedic, all that sort of stuff, and just fell in love with this career and calling. It's more of a career, more of a calling than a career. I say to people, people have careers throughout their life, but when you have a calling in the fire service, it resonates with you, and you just want to live it throughout everything you do. So, was very fortunate to find a calling in the fire service, and here I am, career size, 24 years later, working in a great department in the suburb of St. Louis County in Kirkwood. Assistant chief of training operations there. I've been afforded tremendous opportunities through my entire career. And so that's why I do what I do and just share my experiences, my training, my education, what I've done, because I know not everyone is as fortunate to have been afforded the same opportunities. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to kind of pay it forward in some of the things I've been afforded to do. And so that's why I do what I do. And so, some of the things I've been able to do with FDIC and fire engineering, and then of course now with the ISFSI and being the president of that organization, and really living that calling of fire service training and leaving it better that we found it. So that's a little about me, and I always tell people this too, I was like every one of us probably listen to this or will listen to this. I started as a firefighter that only wanted to ride backwards. That's all I really ever wanted to do. I just want to be a firefighter, paramedic, just run calls. I'd never in a million years had aspirations of ever standing in front of a crowd and teaching. Never in a million years had aspirations of writing anything. It was just, like I said, when the calling hit, you find ways to okay, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And if you put yourself out there in the fire service, doors are going to open, and you might get pushed through them in some cases, and not in a bad way, right? And in a good way, to get you uncomfortable, but put you in situations to where you can fully exploit your availability to the fire service. And so that's, I've been fortunate to have a lot of doors open for me, and been very fortunate to have a lot of mentors and peers, such as yourself, that have pushed me to do better things and really and make myself a better firefighter and a fire officer.
No, I love that. It's there's a lot of I was taking notes on the side here because there's a couple things you touched on that I really like. So one, the calling thing, just because it's the most recent thing. I love that you said that, right? We don't say it you and I are friends. We know each other, but we don't say that to be cliche. It's true. You start out and you don't realize where it's going to take you. And if you really dedicate yourself to it and you allow it to consume you in a positive way, the possibilities are endless. And then it becomes a calling. And then we have these opportunities like this today. And you and I get to do, and the things that you've done through ISFSI, but also with FDIC and with fire engineering, you're on the board, you review, you've reviewed my articles before, you review content that's shared about instructional development and training officer stuff. You gave a keynote. This isn't a notoriety thing. It's a calling. It's a way for us to have a larger classroom, not audience, but classroom. We're teaching, we're passing on information, we're inspiring people, we're mentoring people. And, I love that you said that because it's so factual, it's oftentimes missed. And I feel like people need to understand, when you get to go to those conferences, those opportunities are huge because you have instructors that are bringing information in from all over, and they're doing it. Most are doing it for the right reason because they want to share that information. They want to pass on some good nugget so somebody grabs something. So I love that you said that. Not to take away from you, but the other thing, finding out about your ancestors. So I thought I was a first generation firefighter. I didn't think that I had any firefighters in my family. My father worked as a maintenance person on boilers, and my mother worked in the school district. And I didn't really know if anybody had a fire service career, but I just knew I loved firemen since I was a kid. I thought it was the coolest thing, right? After I became a firefighter, I found out my grandfather had actually been the fire chief at this chemical plant in Jersey City called Mellencroft Chemical, and he had retired in August. After I was born in June, and he retired in August, and nobody ever talked about it because the plant was shutting down. So he had enough time to retire. He went and got a job with the school district to finish out, paying and making ends meet. So I thought that's what he did. I just didn't know,
Yeah.
And then I joined the fire service, and he starts talking to me about hazmat and fire inspections, and I actually have his fireman's license from when he became a firefighter. And it's cool because back in Jersey back then, they had to be recertified, and his tag was FMN in charge because he was the chief. So fireman in charge. And I thought, well, how cool is that? And it's from 1972 or something, but it's just cool that you shared that. Cause I've never found anybody has a similar thing where you find, hey, somebody was a fireman in my family before and I didn't even know it. So that's really cool,
Yeah, it was wild to find his pictures and his hat. And like I said, it was when my aunt passed away. We were just going through all her stuff, and I'm like, "What is this?" And they're like, "Oh, that's your your great grandfather stuff. And I'm like, it's a fireman's hat. They're like, oh yeah, he was a fireman in Webster Groves. Back then it was all volunteer. And so it was just something that everybody did, right? All the prominent people in the communities were firefighters.
Yeah.
And so, he was just a, firefighter. And so we found pictures, his hat and his old employee manual. And it was just like,
Yeah.
And then his last name was Zerwesta on my mom's side. And then I'm Zaitz on my dad's side. And so it would have two Z's. It's like, okay, it was meant to be.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's honestly really cool. So let's talk about some training officer stuff. You touched on it a little bit. So something that's passionate and near and dear to both of us. One, roles, responsibilities, and why is it important to not only have good instructors, good training officers, but why should people aspire to do it? Because it becomes taboo. It's like what I've noticed, and I know you have. The guy that trains the firefighters is a stowaway. It's like, well, we're going to stick you in here because we don't want you on the engine. It's like, I want that done. Like this guy's responsible for developing the next great up and comers. He needs to be good himself.
100%. Right. And, I always, in the world of budgets and everything like that, the first thing cuts training. Right. And so to your point, a lot of times people get jammed up in training or the training division because it's like, we'll just push you over there. And, it's a sad reality, but I've always had a passion for training because I don't know what it is. I love getting out there. It's a time for us to be able to do our job. We don't always have the opportunity to go on a lot of fires, rescues, but in training, we can fully utilize our skills. So it's an opportunity in my books for, if you do it right, for your members to be able to provide value to their crews and their organization and then provide value to themselves. They can actually exploit what they've been working so hard to achieve through a training exercise or a drill. And so that, obviously that always brings up morale. So that's always a big positive of training. As it relates to the training officer in that role, it's the, I always say the company officer is the most critical role in the fire service. And I truly still believe that. But I said, second to that's the training officer because they can impact what the crews are doing on a daily basis. They can impact what the crews are training on. They can impact how the crews are going to perform on a fire, how they're going to be able to, protect their community in an efficient, effective manner. And so if you find yourself in that role of a training officer, consider it a blessing. I had a friend of mine, department of name will remain nameless. And he was a big department, right? Big city department. And good dude. He was on shift. And he's like, dude, they're pushing me to training. And I'm like, yeah, man, what's up with that? He's like, oh, it's miserable. I'm like, are you kidding me? You got the best job coming. I said, you're going to be able to impact the entire organization. And so he didn't see it like that, right? Like he didn't see the opportunity. He saw the disadvantage of I'm going from a shift, I'm going to run calls, to now I'm getting jammed up in a 40-hour week where I'm just going to be admin. And so, a year later after he took this assignment, he called me. He's like, dude, this has been the best reset in my career I've ever had. And and so, as a training officer, put into it what you would expect as a new firefighter, what you'd want your training officer to put into it. Right. So like, I always put myself in those shoes. Right. And I think to myself, like, okay, as I developed the training plan for 2025, as I developed training still, and looking at scenarios and 1403 drills and our 1410 drills and 1403 live burns and how we can do these things, I want it to be challenging for the crews, but I also want it to be realistic and I want it to be relevant to them so that when they come out of it, they're like, man, that was good. Like I felt like my time was valued and I got something out of it. And I feel like too many guys that are in training just go through and check the box, right? They're like, hey, just, I put the PowerPoints up, I clipped through the slides, I read what was on the slides. I didn't interject my own personal experiences. I didn't really put the value into it that I needed to. I didn't put the energy and effort into it that it really, truly deserves. And at the end of it, one, the guys are frustrated, right? We know that. We've seen that. We've been to trainings where the guys are like, this was the worst 2.5 hours or whatever the hell it was I did. Or this was we just reviewed the most basics of things, but they didn't really learn anything or get anything out of it. They weren't better at the end of it than they were before it. And so, if you're in the training officer role, afford your people that opportunity to be better at the end of it through your efforts and your time putting into it.
Yeah. Again, I always jot things down when I hear something that like just spikes me. And everything you said, obviously you and I, we've talked, but this is something that we're both very similar on. Yep. So I'm not going to beat it up. I'm just going to agree, and I'm going to echo is One, it is absolutely an honor and a privilege to be given the training officer role. We have to, people like you and I have to continue to advocate to the general public and to the future up and comers of our thing that they should aspire for that. So like another thing that you and I share, and I knew this, but I just forgot to mention it, is the company officer thing. Like, so I'm very passionate about the training officer position, but anytime people ask me, like people always ask me, like, what was your favorite thing to do in the fire? So I always say captain. Riding the front seat, having your crew, having your company is literally, it's just awesome. It's not a control thing, but it's very easy to maintain and manage when you have your company. You just know literally every single thing about those people. And I think that's what generated some of that like desire to want to train folks, was training that core group of my company that I had on my engine. So, I just, you touched on a bunch of things. I think that just my pass along to anybody viewing or listening is, I think there's a certain path to success. It's not written in stone, so don't get caught around the axles. But growing as a firefighter, learning what worked, what you liked from your instructors or your training officers as you were developing, and then what impact you had as a company officer, what you were able to do as a company officer, will certainly mold you into how efficient you're going to be as a training officer. And I think that's why people like you and I, like, we're very passionate about like those things. Like, we don't just talk about training officer, but we talk about like that pathway to it, because it truly does. It makes or breaks it. And then you got to love training. You got to love developing people. Like you were saying, like what an opportunity to be able to be the person to help develop, those guys and the future. I loved everything you were saying. It's all good stuff. This was a long time overdue. I'm glad that we're doing it. Because it goes right along with my message always,
Well, and you mentioned the company officer role, and that was probably my favorite time. I did 10 years total as a company officer before I took this role, and so I always talk about like it's the most influential role, I think, because if you look at any organization that's great, they're going to have good company officers that are rowing in the right direction and following the vision of the command staff, right, of the admin. If you look at any crappy organization, I don't care how good the chief is or whatever, you're going to go to the station and you're going to see companies that aren't performing well. There's no leadership in the stations. And it all comes out of the company officer. And so the company officer, I can sit there Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day and tell them to do blah, 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 blah. And as soon as I walk out the door, conversations are going to be had at the kitchen table. Trucks are going to do what they do on scenes. Companies are going to do what they do on situations. And so it's up to that company officer, and the company officer can curtail or can lead into good or bad conversations and can lead into good or bad positive morale in the stations. And so, to your point, I mean, it's just echo what you're saying is, it is so influential because they have a direct impact on 4 to 5 individual firefighters every day that they come into work. I can have an impact as my role through training, meeting them, a few times a month through some training, through some policies, some procedures, whatever it is. But I don't have that day-to-day impact where they, I could say something. They're like, yeah, I respect him, but it's not like the company officer, right?
It's intimate with the company officer.
Yeah. And I always said as a company officer, the worst thing that somebody could tell me is they were disappointed in me. I don't care if you're mad at me. I don't care if you're frustrated or whatever. But if you ever said you were disappointed, I would be like, oh, it hits to the core, right? Because that's a character trait. Like you kept me in the character trait. Like, and I always said that, like, that's the thing you want to have is like, you want to be respected by your crew. You might like you, but at the end of the day, they know you're making them better and you're doing what's right for them. So while they may, oh, Cap, we got to do training again. Oh, hey, Cap, we're pulling hose again. Or hey, Cap, whatever it might be, right? But at the end of the day, they're going to go through it. And at the end of it, they're going to be like, that was pretty good, Cap. Thanks. And when they say that thanks, and you always hear it, right? Like you just kind of brush it off, but you hear it. That's them thanking you for helping them survive the next fire, being better. Because at the end of the day, we all want to be that go-to company, right? We want to arrive on the scene and the incident commander's like, shit, engine 6 is here. All right, engine 6, come up to the scene. I need to do X because these guys are flubbing it up, right? I know engine 6 can get stuff done. Whatever it is, or truck 2 or whatever you're on, or, like us 1510, like 1520, whatever it is, right? We know that those companies are the go-to companies for the organization. And so I always aspired as a company officer to be that company that when I arrived on the scene, Chief heard my voice on the radio
They were happy you were coming.
They're like, they're here. Okay. The cavalry has arrived. Let's get to action. Get them up here. Things are going to, everybody takes a deep breath. Like everything's going to be better. And, no offense, right? Right. When I show up on the scene with my call sign, nobody really is like, oh, thank God he's here. They're like, shit, he's here. It's more like that versus like a company shows up. They're like, oh man, good thing they're here. Right. Like, so it's just relative, it's just a different perspective, but it's cool. Right. Like, I always say that too, but company officer, most influential, great role in fire service, but you got to have people step up. And unfortunately, inside fire service, we're now always seeing people step up in certain roles for different reasons, which is unfortunate. But I can tell you, man, if you ever, to everybody listening, if you get the chance and you are passionate, don't take this training officer role. Don't take it as a stepping stone. Don't take it as like, hey, I'm going to go be this training officer because it's the next step towards the assistant chief or the deputy chief or the fire chief, whatever it is. Take the training officer role because you directly want to impact your organization in a positive manner through training. You directly want to impact your organization on fire scenes to be more efficient, effective, and safe. And you want to make your people better. That's why you should take a training officer role for no other reason other than those things.
Yes. Dude, if we didn't have to talk about ISFSI, we could have ended the show right on that. That was like exclamation point mic drop, bro. Like, I love that. You know what I mean? That was awesome. Love that. Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about ISFSI. So,
okay.
I know, there's a lot of great stuff that you guys have to offer. With the past history of the soliciting the recruitment of ISFSI, I can tell you, and I'm not just saying it because, Brian's my friend, like I'm dealing with bureaucracy stuff, as he knows, for years with my realm, and for ethics, I can't say who I work for, but anyway, I would highly recommend, if you are an instructor, an adjunct instructor, a training officer, a company officer, somebody who aspires to want to get information and teach others, you should become a member of ISFSI. But not to put you on the spot, but tell us about it. Tell us what it entails. Tell us, give us your sales pitch on why people should become members and how that all looks.
So ISFSI, we're about 2,000 member organization throughout the whole world, right? So a lot of organizations call themselves international, and they might have some members in North America, maybe somebody over in Europe or something like that's a member, so they call themselves international. But sorry, my dog's whining at me. Get out of Mabel. But yeah, so ISFSI, about 2,000 member organization. We're truly international. We got members all over throughout Africa. We got members in Europe. We got members in Asia. A lot of members in Canada. Obviously, a predominant bulk share of our membership is in North America and USA. But yeah, I mean, so ISFSI, it's all instructor driven. It's all about making a better instructor, and so that's what we do, right? That's what my mission is now that I've taken presidency. Is like I want to be every one of our members to have the opportunity to fully exploit themselves as an instructor. And so people are like, well, what does ISFSI do for me? What do I need to pay for? And two things I tell people is it's just like anything. You get out of it what you put into it, right? So if you put a lot into it, you're going to get a lot out of it. But if you don't put anything into it, it's just you're going to cut a check. And so don't let yourself be that person cutting checks. But we have online training programs for members. We do different webinars for members for professional development opportunities. You get exposure to different people. One of the biggest things that I would think you'd agree with is in the fire service is having a professional network, right? Of people you can call, ask, bounce questions off of ideas. And ISFSI has some of the most prominent, in my opinion, most prominent and relevant members in the fire service. And so, you have access to all those people. And so, I can pick up the phone right now and make a phone call to 6 or 7 different people and get 6 or 7 different ideas on a training idea or a topic or whatever it might be. And so ISFSI affords you that opportunity. We have a lot of different programs. We have the training officer program, the training officer credential, which is, an online training that basically, dovetails with the CPSC's CTO program, which is really nice. So we have that available. Obviously, our flagship is the NFPA 1403 live burn credential. So, it's a 3-day program. And at the conclusion of it as an instructor, you really have a very strong grasp on how to conduct live burns in a safe and productive manner, right? So that's a big thing too, is productive. And I always say that too, is like, our instructors that are out there teaching it, we get tons of these classes across the country, even into Canada, throughout the year. And, we've all been to live burns, right? You walk in, the live burn, there's a, little thing in the corner and blah, blah, blah. And then you squirt the water and check the box for the year. I did my 1403 burns. We show you how to like incorporate actual training elements into that live burn so that you get the most bang for your buck, right? And so that's a huge component of our 1403 3-day class. We've partnered with FSRI on a lot of different programs. The Principles of Modern Fire Tech being our the prominent one that everybody's probably heard of and taken. So, that was the initial like science and all that stuff that came out about 10 years ago. Our most recent program that we're getting ready to deliver across the country is NFPA 1400, which directly deals with training officers, right? And this was kind of my brainchild idea that we got a grant for, was all the NFPA 1400 stuff. If you read it from 1403, 04, 07, 08, 10, 51, all those relate to training, right? The 1400 is all training stuff. And so, a lot of verbiage, words matter, right? We've all heard that words matter. And so, in those 1400 series, there's a lot of shalls, not shoulds, but shalls. And so when you see the word shall, like you're held to that then, like you shall have this. And so as I read that, I'm like, man, it's kind of weird. I don't have a policy on this to the T, right? To NFPA. So of course, what I do, I go and reach out my network and I'm like, hey, do you have a policy? No, I don't got a policy on that. I'm like, well, how do you not? You're like, okay, so maybe that's just an off one. So what I found was a lot of training officers didn't always have everything that was necessary, right? Like we didn't have all the tools to meet the 1403 standard or the 1400 standards. So we wrote up a curriculum, applied for an AFG grant. We're very fortunate to get accepted for that. And so we just had our first delivery of an 8-hour hands-on NFPA 1400 and a roadmap for the modern fire instructor. And so it goes through all those things. It touches on 1403. Obviously, we don't come out of the one day with a 1403 credential, but it touches on 1403. It goes through 1404 for respiratory, 1407 for RIT, 1408 for thermal imaging, 1410 for first arriving emergency scene operations, and the 1451 for driving. And it goes through all that. And then on top of that, we also have an online course that's completely free, whether you're a member or not. And that'll be same information and policies, procedures, templates. All those things will be available there. And so, that's one of the things I'm really proud of is that, that we're continuing to, kind of push the bar a little bit in terms of training and really trying to hone in on what does the instructor need? What does the training officer need to be better? And so, that's why I always encourage people, if you're, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. Like if you're a company officer that does training, and every company officer should be doing training. If you're not doing a good job as a company officer. If you're a company officer doing training, if you're an instructor at your local academy, you're an adjunct instructor, if you're a training officer, definitely, look us up, get on the ISFSI.org website, check it out, take a look at it, join. If you're going to FDIC, it's a no-brainer because it's actually cheaper to join and then get your 10% off than it is to pay the full fee. So I always tell people, like, we should have 30,000 members because 30,000 people go to FDIC every year. So we should be, 1,000-fold whatever membership, but it is what it is. So lofty goals.
No, I love it because I'll tell you, like, I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't know all those things were going on. I'm not surprised, and it's no disrespect to any of your predecessors. I knew you had a vision in mind going into taking on the role. So I'm not surprised that you've already hit the ground running with a lot of that stuff. That's awesome. So congratulations to you. That's seriously awesome. I guess one of the questions I would have for the audience, just audience-wise, would just be like, can some of those training things that not just the online one, but like let's say 1403, can those be brought to organizations that you could at ISFSI could bring 1403 training to an organization? Is that something that's possible?
100%. 100%. Okay. Yeah. So if you reach out to us and you want to, have a 1403 class at your department, let us know and we will, set it up and get the rosters going. Obviously there's a fee to it, but it's a 3-day class and, you don't have to host everybody. Like every member doesn't have to come from your department, right? Like you can, maybe make a regional delivery to lessen that cost for everybody, which is always a good thing. So any of our classes are available, regionally to any department that wants to host them. Just let us know. The 1400 class that we're getting ready to deliver right now, there'll be 25 of those. So kind of be looking. The sites, we put a call out for locations, and those have already been selected. So, but there'll be 25 of those throughout the entire country. So there's likely going to be one close to you, hopefully, or at least within a proximity that you can get to. So look for those. You don't have to be a member to attend one of our 1400 AFG grant funded classes, because it is grant funded. So,
but you should.
You should be. And I highly encourage you. And I hope that if you show up and you're not a member at the 1400, at the end of the class, you want to join. It's always amazing, when we have people take classes and stuff like that. One, they take the class, they're like, this was great. Your instructors are great. So they always feel like they re-energize their batteries at the end of the 8 hours. And then they're always like, how do I get more involved? I'm like, well, the first thing you gotta do is be a member. Like, you got to join. And so then they join, they get involved, and they start writing articles. We have a monthly newsletter that comes out. So, and I always encourage people, like I told you earlier, like, I never aspired to write. Like, I was never a person in school that's like, oh, let me write stuff because it's just enjoyable to me. It was never that's something I did. But we have a newsletter that goes out monthly. And so if you're a member and you're aspiring to, like, hey, you know what, someday I want to write for fire engineering, but I just don't know that my content's there yet, submit an article to us, and, we'll look at it and help you out along the way, right? Like, we have tons of mentors. That's one of the other things that's great about ISFSI is we have a formal mentorship program. So if you're a brand new training officer, we can help you get all the stuff you need to be successful. I always tell this story when I was I just got on the board, and there was a lieutenant out of a small town, and he made training officer, and he called, and he didn't know any different. He's like, here's the deal. I had some corruption in my department. Chief left, assist chief left. I'm a lieutenant. They just put me in charge of training. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And so we hooked him up with like 6 different training officers that were top-notch dudes, like prominent names in the fire service. You've all heard of them. All members of ISFSI. They like started sending this dude stuff. Within 6 months, he's like, I think I got training for the next 7 years figured out because of you guys. And so he's always been a huge advocate for us to this day. But that's the stuff that ISFSI can do, right? Like, we can open the doors that are necessary for you to be successful in your career, whether it's writing articles, whether it's, formal instruction, whether it's teaching, whether it's, just success in your own organization as a better instructor, training officer, whatever you need, the ISFSI can open those doors for you to make you more successful.
Right. And then one of the things that I want to say, we would be remiss because it's a fire engineering podcast, so due to due diligence, but also I just want to say, like, it's actually a fact that I'm saying this, so it works out. So like most of, and I didn't know this until the past, 6 years or 7 years or whatever, but like most of the people that are the members of the society, members of the ISFSI, members and instructors, people that would review is like, so like Brian said, like if you were looking to submit an article and you really didn't know how, and you really didn't know, but you had this idea and all that, and they have their newsletter that they send out, those folks that can help you build that and review that, they're teachers, instructors at FDIC, and they're authors for fire engineering. Like, most of the membership teaches at FDIC and writes for fire engineering. So you are literally getting, some top-notch, well-rounded people to review your stuff and give you assistance. So just with that said, it's a nice cadre of folks that you guys have in the group that are members that will review and help aspiring training officers, newly promoted training officers, stuff like that. It's not, and I say this just because I don't want anybody that, like, you get the eye rollers. It's not just a good old boys club to pay membership for. Like, I'm trying, and I'm not bullshitting, like, Brian, it's just been a pain in the ass for me. Like, I'm trying to get where I work, which is a large group, to try to get memberships for it because I believe in it. So if you don't have to deal with the crap that I have to deal with bureaucracy from certain levels of government agencies, you should do it. There's no reason not to. The possibilities are endless. The contacts are endless. The connections are endless. Like you said before, it's a large network. I'm all about networking. I love networking. I feel like part of my successes, just me personally, has been based off of people like yourself, having those contacts, with being able to reach out to this Rolodex of resources. And you guys have that, and they're all squared away dudes. It's not just like spring chicken idiot who just paid dues. Like, no, these are vetted, proper people who are passionate about strengthening our fire service and finding the best way forward through training. So, I think I would highly encourage anybody that's viewing this. It's not a sales pitch. I get nothing for it. You should become members, because any opportunity to strengthen your training program as well as increase your Rolodex of people you can ask to help is a great opportunity. And this has that.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. When I joined, I think it was, got to think back 11, 12 years ago, whatever it was, when I joined the ISFSI, it was one of those things like, I was at FDIC like everybody else, I'm walking by the booth and they're like, hey, are you going to come to the social tonight? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Somebody invited me to social, and ended up joining at the social because you had to, right, to get to the social, whatever. But it's the best thing I ever did, right? Like, because you just met so many different people. And the thing I can tell you is, regardless of whether you join or not, right? If you're coming to FDIC, hopefully you're coming, we'd be remiss if we didn't tell you Monday is the opening day for registration. Early registration opens October 7th. So make sure you set your calendars and ready for Monday early registration to set for FDIC. But when you get up there and you're walking the halls, stop whoever you think is important in the fire service, because I can tell you, all of us are the same. Like, and I'm nobody. I am 100% nobody in the fire service. But if you got a question about something I've written or something I've talked about, or you've got just stop me. I'd love to have a conversation with anybody. And I can tell you that goes all the way up to Chief David Rhodes, who's in charge of fire engineering, the most humble guy out there. Stop and say, hey, I read what you did on X, Y, and Z. Thought it was great. What inspired you? And they'll give you a minute of their time, 2 minutes of their time, whatever. And you can connect with those people. I remember one of the first times I went to FDIC as a student, and I was just like in awe of all these, like, in my world, superheroes, right? That are like fire service superheroes that are teaching these classes. And now majority of them I call friends, or, and I can talk to, or even call on a phone. And none of that would have been possible had I just not broke the ice and said, hey, listen, I read, and I always remember Chief Bobby Halton, God rest his soul. He always said, he's like, what my neighbor thinks I am? I'm like, what? He's like, a fireman. Because that's what I am, a fireman. And that's what all of us are, right? Like, none of us, I don't care how many books you write or what you're in charge of. When you go back to your house and you're cutting your grass and your neighbor walks out and they're like, oh, there's Fireman Dave. There's Fireman Brian. They're like, that's the president of they don't think that. They don't know that, right? Like, that's not us. And so just know that when you're walking the halls of FDIC and you're coming around and you want to talk to anybody, just walk up and start talking, man. We're all firefighters. We want to have a conversation with you. We want to, bust each other's chops, have a cold beer once in a while, and just enjoy the camaraderie of being in a productive fire service. And that's what FDIC provides us.
No, amen. I can't even say that better. I agree. I've met some of the best friends, colleagues, and I use the word mentor like with seriousness. So like there are mentors are people that throughout your career, they can help you keep you on track because they care about your well-being and your development. Right. So I have met and connected with some great mentors. I've made great friends. I'm not saying it because, you're on the show, like you and Jim. Like, I love you guys, man. You know what I mean? Like, I see you guys a few times a year. I'm very fortunate, like that's pretty cool. Like you meet people when you're out there that you connect with on a professional level, and that then develops into a true friendship, which is beautiful. There's not a lot of places that have that. So I agree. And I will also say Monday, make sure you do early registration as a good steward to the board, right? Right. Yeah, but early registration Monday, right? Yeah.
It also gives you the early hotel, so you get one of those downtown hotels that everybody strives for. So
listen, that's for sure, man. So if anybody's listening, this is airing Friday night. So it's Friday night, October 4th. You have a few days. That is prime real estate downtown. So get your hotel when you can, and definitely do the early registration. I think that you would be a fool if you didn't hop on that opportunity now, because it can get costly, and it's worth its weight in gold to try to get out there. So if any cost savings are there, they're there. And then, Brian, like you said, hit up the ISFSI folks when you get out there, because they're there. They have a booth. They have a full presence. Brian and his crew, they're working the halls. They have programs. They have classrooms. Brian teaches as well as his own class, but they do membership with a discount out there. So if you're not a member and you're there, not only will you get inside information from, you're in the booth, like you're the president of ISFSI. It works the booth. You're going to get contact information with not just some salesman, but like the guy who is responsible for it and is truly passionate about it, and who, oh, by the way, is an author for fire engineering and an instructor at FDIC. So you have this great source of information standing right there in the booth in front of you. But I would encourage anybody to look you guys up and check that out. I think
you can't miss us, right by the fire department coffee, guys. So come get a cup of coffee and come talk to us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's funny. All right. So one of the things that I usually touch on with my guests is I ask this question, and it's because I give the background. As training officers, as instructors, everything has an objective, right? When we put it together a lesson plan, we have objectives, right? So it's without arrogance, it's without narcissism. It's literal. Like, there's that expression, leave it better than you found it. What is our purpose? What are we doing? There has to be some objective for our 25 to 30 years that we invest into what we do. Like you said earlier when we started the show, you got into it, you just wanted to ride the back step. And then look at where it's taken you now. And it's a calling, and you take on these opportunities as an opportunity to share a message and inspire others, and also learn, right? So after all this is said and done, both professionally and personally, what type of legacy would you hope to leave behind?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's when you think of legacies, people tend to always think legacy and they tie their name to it. Like, hey, that's guy, and then they think of something that guy did. Like, Martin Luther King and the legacy of what he achieved, even post-mortem, what he has been able to accomplish, through civil rights. And so, that's a legacy. I think for myself as a legacy, it's hard, right? Like it's a tough question, when you start thinking about it, because to your point, like most of us are pretty humble people, or at least try to be humble people. And so you just try to do what you do every day and just think, okay, hey, at the end of the day, do a little bit better today than I did yesterday, and do a little bit better tomorrow than I did today. And so, but I would like for my legacy to be an officer that was respected, that was guiding, and that truly met the fire service head on. And so what, and then you're like, well, what does that all mean? Right. So like, what do you really mean by all that stuff? So, the met the fire service head on is a big thing for me. And I always tell, as guys get promoted, we just promoted a couple captains, and I have conversations with them, and I always tell them like, hey, you get one opportunity for your first day and these sort of things. And, when I meet with recruit classes, I tell them the same thing. I'm like, hey, this is the start of your career. And, and so, a lot of us in the fire service can find ourselves, getting honed in and just getting the blinders on and just seeing our department, right? Like, hey, nobody wants to hear what Brian Zaitz has got to say at Kirkwood Fire Department because he's, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine, right? Like you can focus in on your department and make your department great, but share that message, right? Like if you're doing good stuff, which most guys are doing good stuff in the fire service, share it. I would love to hear what somebody else is doing at XYZ Fire Department. Maybe it's helpful to me, like, right? Or maybe it just codifies what I'm already doing. Like, hey, the guys are getting bummed out because we're doing 60-second drills. Why is a 20-year dude doing 60-second drills? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of, right? Like, but we did time to task training. We realized that was a failure point, blah, blah. So we and I'm just using it as an example. But, then I see some other department, halfway across the country in Alabama saying, oh, yeah, we're doing 60-second drills because, we did these 14-10 drills and we did time to task. I'm like, oh, man, okay. I'm not completely loony here and off my rocker as an instructor. And so that's what I say when I say meet the fire service head on is recognize the issues and problems that are facing the fire service today and realize what your impact could be and what you can do to change those things. There's all kinds of things you can do in the fire service. And so I know I'm kind of getting off topic on a tangent here, but the fire service is only going to get better and only going to improve if we do it, if we step forward and do it. And so we can either be part of the change or we can allow the change to come from other people. People always complain about NFPA committees. Well, there's too many of this. Well, because there's not enough firefighters applying for NFPA committees. So get on an NFPA committee with your opinions and your ideas and change the NFPA committee. FSRI is always taking people for tech panels. They just put out a brand new tech panel with 25 people. Apply for that. Get in there and apply for that. Look at your regional fire schools. If you're an instructor with a good message, apply for your regional fire school. And if you can't get in regional fire school, hey, that's cool. Call 4 or 5 departments and say, hey, listen, I got this class, on high rise, and I've been wanting to do it. Do you mind bringing a few of your guys over? Doesn't cost you anything. I'm going to do it, from 2 to 4 on a Saturday, whatever it is, and we're going to crank this thing out. I just want to hear your opinions on it. But you got to put yourself out there. You got to make yourself a little bit vulnerable, a little bit uncomfortable. And I can promise you that you're not going to be standing on an island by yourself. You're going to find yourself around a bunch of peers and a bunch of great firefighters and fire officers that are in the same boat as you that just want to make the fire service better. And so for me, I think that's really what I want my legacy to be. It's not something I did or something I achieved or whatever, but really to be the guy when I look back and people say, hey, Brian Zaitz, what'd that guy do? Well, he wasn't afraid to put himself out there. He wasn't afraid to challenge the norm, and he met the fire service head on.
I love it. I love everything you covered. You didn't get off topic at all because everything you said was relevant and it ties right into, that legacy piece, and I'm glad that you covered, because I want that to be understood. I asked the question because your body language is the response I get from everybody asked that question. I don't, I never invite anybody who is like a selfish person on here. So you always see them like, yeah. You guys don't even realize you do it. Your whole body just completely.
Yeah, your whole body shifts what do I say? How do we know what I'm doing?
Right. But it makes it for that. That's why that question's so important, especially in our thing. There's so many people out there that are scratching at trying to have celebrity status notoriety, and it hurts. It creates speculation on validity. And when we're out here trying to just share information and learn information, it makes it tough. So I asked that question because you always find true value in the people that are doing it for the right reason. And I've been, however many people I've had on the show for the past 6 years now that I've had the show, I've had great success in the responses I've gotten from the folks that I asked that question to. And I love that, like I said, you didn't go off on a tangent or go off topic because the things that you covered were very relevant because what showed in that was the importance of that networking piece and the constant development piece. And I love how you tied it back to that's where you want to be remembered for those type of things. And it's just, it's very important. It was a great answer. It was a great answer. It was a very thought out, and you didn't even think of it. You answered it off the cuff, which was great. It was honestly, and that's what's important. I want the people to listen is yours doesn't have to be mirrored to somebody else's, but understand that as a person and as a professional and as a steward to our thing, to the fire service. And then eventually if you're somebody that rises to the company officer level or chief officer level or training officer level, you are in a position of influence. And if you don't have some kind of mental invisible objective of how you want those things to do. Look, what kind of vision you would have for yourself and what it is that you want to accomplish. Like Ben Franklin said, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. You have to have some kind of plan, even if it's invisible and it only resides in your mind. And that plan thus is an objective, which is then in turn what your legacy would be on what you did while you were there. So I love the answer. It was great. You want to say anything else? I'm going to give you the floor. I was going to say, but I didn't know if you had a response.
I was going to hit on a topic you had about mentorship, and in the fire service, we hear that word a lot. And I think, from the fire, I always say this because, ISFSI, we have a formal mentorship program. And so, a lot of people think like, well, what does mentorship look like in the fire service? And, how do I, nobody wants to listen to me. And so a lot of times people pick somebody to mentor, or they'll think like, I'll mentor this person, but what I have found, and this has just been my little experiences, I think people are better suited. Yeah. Have somebody you're going to follow, right? Like have somebody that's your go-to in your network. Like, hey, I'm new to the department. This is my senior guy. This is my, training guy on the truck or the ambulance, whatever it is, right? That's your go-to person, right? But, when you step into these roles, company officer, chief officer, and things like that, we're all extremely busy and we get tied up in a million different things. And I can tell you, I think personally, I go back to from when I was a company officer and what it meant to me. And now that I'm a chief officer and what it means to me to be able to go, do not hesitate to have that conversation with someone. Don't hesitate to take that 15 seconds to tell somebody they're doing a great job. Don't hesitate to take that 30 seconds to tell somebody, hey man, you spotted the truck a little crazy. What were you thinking? Correct those actions that occur, but have those conversations with people. That to me is really mentorship, is like, hey, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What do you want to see out of yourself in this department? What do you want this department to look like? I have those conversations with company officers. I have those conversations with firefighters. So I was talking the other day to a firefighter. It's crazy to me because this kid was born. I call him a kid, right? It's terrible. He's 21 years old. But this guy was really born after 9/11. He wasn't even alive when 9/11 happened. And so, but it's funny to me because, it's kind of a quirky, blah, 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 out there kind of, 21 years old, right? Like his whole world is like this car he just bought. But it's so weird because I look at this guy and I think to myself, like, this is me. This was me 23 years ago, right? Like had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I just told him, I said, dude, I see a lot of myself in you. And he's like, bro, like kind of looked at me like I had 7 heads. And I'm like, dude, the doors are open for you. You're 21 years old. You get hired into the best career, calling in the world. And truly the world is your oyster. And I think sometimes we fail as chiefs, as leaders, as company officers, training officers, whatever it is, to really let people know that. Like, hey, listen, like, you might think that, the Chief McGlynn, chief of his department, does this podcast, teaches FDICs on the board, travels around the country teaching, like, oh my gosh, like I'll never be there. Why couldn't you? And I think that's the thing is that we, in the fire service, a lot of firefighters and people sell themselves short, and maybe it never will, right? Like maybe you'll never make it to the national stage, but who cares, right? If you have a positive message, be advocates for your people. If you're a training officer, your company officer, be an advocate for your people, be constantly talking to them, be constantly having conversations with good and bad. Don't just be getting on them when they're negative. That's mentorship, in my opinion. Like, and I don't want to get off on a crazy non-training officer topic, but, that's what we have to have is an open dialogue in the fire service where, people can have conversations about what's going on in their world, what's going on in the fire service. We're not afraid to exchange ideas and thoughts. We can have them in a productive manner. And at the end of the thing, everybody is better because of it. No hurt feelings, but we can have an adult conversation and we can be better at the end of it. And that's, to me, that's what mentorship looks like.
Yeah. And they're tied together.
Yeah.
You can tie mentor. It's overly used, but we're using it for the right reason. So coaching and mentoring, two different things, but they're very much the recipe for success for any instructor and or training officer. And then, like you said, I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking for me when I say what I'm going to say. So, like, I appreciate the opportunities that we have, that we get to go national, and that we get all these opportunities to do these big, great things. Like, I love them. I'm not going to lie. Like, I love it. I love that I've met some of the best people that I've ever met, and some people that I never thought I'd break bread with, like you said, the Superman, the heroes that we've had. But I've heard, never from you, but I've heard, jokes from some of our buddies and cadres, like, well, you're never king in your own castle. And while that's true, I will say, just to echo your message before, like, if you don't get on the big stage, quote unquote, right, it is okay. Because with all the opportunities I've had, and I appreciate them and I love them, what matters to me professionally, those things matter. But if I didn't have an impact on the people that I see every day that I'm at work, then I failed. It's great if I have a great national following. I love that. But that's extra. If my guys in the station have no respect for me and no trust for me, and there's no mutual trust, and they don't believe that I can help them mentor, and in turn, they kind of co-mentor me. It doesn't matter if I write a book, another book, a couple articles, do the show, whatever. Your impact is, are you inspiring people, and are you developing people? And in turn, are you developing yourself while you're doing that? And that's what you're saying. And I'm just saying that to the people. Like, that mentor thing goes hand in hand with it. You shouldn't do it just to try to get big. You should do it because it's the right thing to do. And if you're doing that right now in your department, then you're crushing it. You're out there. I say to my guys, I'm like, we're the standard. We're out here shooting threes. That's what you're doing. If you're making stuff happen in your department, you're out there shooting threes. So don't worry about, whether or not you didn't get picked to teach on the big stage, because, your legacy will be written just in your ability to shape the people that you touch every day. And I think that, I know that that's what you're driving at. And those are important things. I think that you were hitting the nail on the head with all of that.
Yeah, most of the instruction, let's be honest, is happening at the local and regional level. And so
the best instruction's happening there.
100%, right? The best. And so, not to, obviously we'd love to have you come to the FDIC. It's a great time, great instruction. And you just get, the thing at FDIC is you get such a wide variety of topics, and you get such a wide variety of perspectives. And that's what makes that such an invaluable training. But, if you're teaching at your local, regional, state, whatever level, and you're making an impact, that's what matters. And to your point too, like you said, if your department thinks you're a bum, then likely you're a bum, so don't let that be the case, for yourself. And so, I recently had an incident, I had to do some stuff for ISFSI. I had to travel, took a really quick flight in out of an event I had to be at, because I wanted to be back for a pinning ceremony for a couple of our guys. And so, things are important, right? So don't discard. Sometimes you can't make everything. I got to miss something coming up because of some stuff, which I hate, but it's part of it. But, if you're on the main stage, you find yourself starting to get some notoriety. Don't forget about the reason you have the notoriety is because of the place you work, the fire department you call home, and that's really the most critical factor for any of us is our home agency, right? And none of us would be where we're at without our home agency. So, I'm very fortunate. Like I said, I work with some of the best at where I work, and they're always striving to just better themselves and better the organization and better the fire service. So, it's for me. I'll be honest, like, it's a pleasure. I come in and they're like, yesterday I walk outside, they're doing training, and I'm like, well, there's nothing on the calendar. Like, yeah, we just want to do some rope stuff today, get some stuff knocked out.
I don't mean to cut you off. Isn't that the best feeling when you didn't have something on the agenda for the day? It wasn't on the details or whatever, the assignments for the day, and they just did it. They did that 100%. Today for me. That's what I like. Today I went into work, man. I had meetings. I had staff meetings and budget crap. And, and it was just – and they were pulling hose. They went down to the training grounds. They were doing these drills. And I didn't even have not my new role. I obviously Scott, my buddy Scott, we brought him to backfill me. Yeah. He didn't have that on the agenda today either. Like, he literally, because he knew we were consumed with meetings. So he knew he was going to be with me. So he put captain's choice, and the captains were out there doing it. And I'm like, I came back. I'm just like, wow, dude, like, how awesome is that? What a well-greased machine,
Well, and I can tell you this too. So, like, it's hard, right? So as a training officer, like we feel like sometimes we have to be in front at all the time. Like we have to be, if I'm not teaching, I'm not doing my job. Like I got to be, da-da-da-da-da. And so, that takes a little bit of, humility, right? To like, hey, listen, you don't know everything. Like there's other people that can do just as good as you teaching something. So, and that took a little bit, like, I'll be honest with you, that took a little bit of me. Like that was like hard for me to be like, take a step back. They're teaching it their way. It's just as effective as the way you do it. Just let them run with it. And so, yesterday was one of those moments, like, right? Like I just walked outside, they were doing their thing, setting up some 3-to-1s, got those Stokes out. And they were crushing it, right? Like you said, they're shooting threes. And so I found myself just standing back and they're like, what do you got? I'm like, I got nothing. I'm a student in your classroom right now. So you guys go through it. I'll just stand here. I had really nothing. They wrap it up. They got a couple new guys. We had one of our 4-year guys showing one of our brand new guys how to set the 3-to-1 up and how the MPD works. It was just cool to see, right? And down here we got the Stokes and so completely organic. And so I think as a training officer, sometimes when those things happen, like sometimes I feel like, and maybe it's just me, but it's like, it's a crush on our ego. Like, oh my God, they're doing training without me. Like, how did that, like, but it's not, it's a ego boost. Like they're doing training.
It's a testament to what you've created.
Yeah. Right. Like that's what you established is like training's is part of the culture. Right. And so when they're doing stuff organically like that, don't take it as an offense. Take it as like, hey, they're following what you want. They're following the culture of what you set. So, right. That's a win all day long.
Right. I agree. All right. So as we wrap up, floor is yours. Final words. Anything you want to leave us with? Anything you want to discuss? Anything you want to plug? Talk about? Anything else about reaching out to you for inquiries regarding ISFSI or how they can write for fire engineering? Brian and I are both on the board, and like I said, we're both board members. He's a friend of mine, and I know because it's his responsibility. If I submit an article for the magazine, I know Brian's going to review it. And I never do, right? Because that's that common respect is I won't text you and be like, hey man, I really want this in, because I know if there's a problem, you're going to be like, hey dude, like, what is this? So that's why I just let you have it. And like, that's the thing is like anything that you want to share, but also if you don't mind, share how, not to put you on the spot, but just how people can reach out to you, because you are your useful knowledge and a useful resource for people. So I want them to know that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. So easiest way to get a hold of me I'm still that old. I'm old, so I'm on Facebook. So you can reach me on Facebook, on social media, Brian Zaitz. My email, brianzaitz@gmail.com. It's just my first and last name, Zaitz. So it's real easy. Send me emails. I'm quick to respond to you. If you got a question like, hey, what are you guys doing in St. Louis on this? I don't care. Like I like talking fire stuff. So those are probably the two easiest ways to get a hold of me. ISFSI.org is our website. So, make sure you check that out. Even if you're just if you're contemplating membership, get on there. On our website alone, we have 180 just drills. So, just think about that. If you're on shift and you're a company officer, you're like, I don't know what to do tomorrow, joining us, you got a year and a half of just every day a drill, and that's crazy to think, and we're adding to it every day. So, 180 drills that are free to your exposure, as soon as you join. So, all that's there, in terms of other, final thoughts and those sort of things, as a training officer is probably one of the hardest jobs in the fire service. Like I said, company officer, critical and a very tough job, but the training officer is tough too. It's just, because you're trying to engage people to practice and drill on skills that they may not use on a daily basis. Right. So like, everybody compares us to like professional sports. They call us the occupational athlete and that sort of thing. But it's a little different, right? Like, and I'm a Chiefs fan. So when Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are practicing, pass plays, there's probably a really good chance they're going to execute that pass play on a Sunday, when they play. So they were practice all week and execute on a Sunday. At the end of that, though, the consequences are either 7 points or no points. If we don't drill and train like that, the consequences are life and death. And so you got to remember that. Like, and so, a lot of times it's cliche. I get all that, like, oh my gosh, you're really pumping it up. But we still got 3,000 citizens dying a year in fires. And so they expect us, when they dial 911 and their house is on fire and they're trapped, that we are the best of the best and we can execute at the highest absolute level we can. And the only way we can do that is through high quality, productive training. And so if you're a training officer, make sure that that's what you're giving to your crews, because your community deserves it.
Oh yeah. Huge. That's awesome. Another exclamation point mic drop. I like that. That was great. No, it was. That's awesome. I agree with that all day long. Yeah, I don't even need to say it. One of the things I say is we practice every day so that we win the Super Bowl on Sunday. We train so that when the bell goes off, we perform like championship style firefighters. You literally just said that same thing. That's what we do. You practice because it's not a matter of, and it's not dismissing what professional athletes do, but like they score, they don't score. We could die or someone could die. Someone could get hurt. They could get hurt, whatever. You have to train and you have to train right. Don't half-ass train. Earlier you had said about, pencil whipping it, ticking off on a checklist, that's not what we do. It's got to be quality versus quantity. You got to do it right. So no, I agree with you, man. This was great stuff. I appreciate it. Like I said, guys, reach out to Brian. He's a great, useful source of knowledge and a great resource. He's passionate about training. He's the president of ISFSI. He's on the board for FDIC and for fire engineering. There's a lot of great assistance and guidance, direction, and mentorship that he can offer. Follow along with things that he has going on. And just, do this for the right reason. Like we said earlier, training isn't a stowaway. You should want to do it and you should want to inspire people and develop people. And in turn, you will develop yourself if you're doing it for the right reason. So, Brian, thank you, brother, for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. I love you. God bless. And, everybody else listening, thank you. This is Dave McGlynn with the Fire Engineering Podcast, the training officer. Everybody stay safe.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with Magnegrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnegrip.com.
Attention first responders, ready for a new challenge? You can turn your leadership skills into deliciousness by becoming a Firehouse Subs restaurant owner. First responders will receive a $100,000 cash incentive to help open their restaurant. Continue serving after service. Visit firehousesubsfranchising.com today.